Well, welcome back to the shop, everybody. I know this video came out right after the other video, but I had a couple of comments in the comments section. I had a friend of mine, Dave Britton, who you all might know from Joe Daddy's Garage, obviously. He made a couple of points as well, and I thought, you know what, let me make a quick follow-up video just to fill in those gaps. Now, if you're watching this video and you haven't yet watched the video that's titled Parts Arrive from CJpony, either don't bother watching this video or go watch that video first. Basically, in that video I describe the costs associated with purchasing, bringing home, restoring a classic Mustang. Now this of course is a 67, 68, but the prices for a 65, 66, I can't believe would be any different, right? You're looking at the same type of car, you're looking at the same cost for panels, you're looking at the same cost for interior. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the car itself. As I mentioned, I paid $10,000 for this car. It was a driver. I drove it. I drove it around the block. It stopped. It did everything I wanted it to do. I didn't know enough at the time, though, that little pit, that little mark, that little blemish would cost so much to replace. And that was one thing I didn't know. The other thing I didn't know is how badly this car was rusted. That certainly wasn't something I had expected. I probably would not have purchased the car if I would have known this level. Although it's hard to say, because why? Because I wanted a convertible. Convertibles only make up 8% of the production run of all Mustangs in 67 and 68. So I'm working with a diminished quantity to begin with. So, the old beggars can't be choosers type of a scenario happens. I needed the car, and trying to find a car was tough. Could I have spent less? I bet you I could have. If I knew now, and what I'm trying to tell you today, is if I knew it was going to cost me $6,000 for the interior and the fenders and the trim and all the other stuff that go with this car, and it was going to cost me $2,300 in metal, I probably would have pushed a little harder and maybe got this car down to $9,000. So it's just about getting you the information you need so that you're prepared to negotiate with real numbers. So that was really the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second part I wanted to talk about were the actual parts. Now this doesn't matter so much for my American friends. I mean, usually in the contiguous continental US, you get free shipping, right? And usually your stuff arrives and you don't pay for it. Obviously minimum charge. We, on the other hand, it's a little different. That little box that was delivered yesterday, 4 feet, 6 inches by 18 inches, had a bunch of parts in it, but really it wasn't that heavy, right? It was foam, a lot of seals. That was $30 to deliver from CJpony's warehouse to my little house here up in Middle Ontario. Well, one of the things that Dave had brought to my mind is that, well, in all honesty, all of the hard parts and all of the soft parts, I had delivered myself. My wife and I love going into the US, and we always have, and we love Canada, and we've driven across the country in Canada. We've driven across the US, we've ridden our motorcycles out to Sturgis, We have been across the US, we've been across Canada. So of course, when I'm restoring a car and I need parts, I'm not going to order them to be delivered. I phone them up, get them to put the order together, and then we'd be across the border, and sometimes we'd be across the border like we did one time. We went down to Florida, went to Disney, spent 4 or 5 days in Disney. On the way home, picked up my parts and came home. The other thing I could have done is that we could have just gone across the border to get the parts. Now what's the difference? The difference is if you spend more than 48 hours in the United States, when you bring parts back across the border, you're able to claim $800 tax-free Canadian. Now there's my wife and myself, so that's $1,600 Canadian that we don't have to pay tax on. So when we would go into the US, we would always make it part of something else. And that way we would be there for 2 or 3 days. We'd come back and it would be almost no tax I'd pay on the parts. The difference though, is if you just go get those parts, then there's tax you have to pay. Now let's look at it this way. Where I live, it is 8 hours. If I get in my truck right now and I drive 8 hours, I could be in the same neighborhood as CJpony. Find a hotel, spend the night, maybe have some dinner, so you're looking at, let's say $100 US for the hotel if you really want a nice hotel, and you've got maybe $30 US for dinner. Gas, 2 or 3 tanks of gas, so you're probably looking at, $300, $200 in fuel. But the idea is now for the price of, let's say, $300 or $400 for that cost, I've gone down and I picked up a pile of stuff, right? I'm not going to go down and pick up one piece. I'm going to pick up a bunch of pieces. Now, and I'll bring those back. And you'll say to yourself, well, gee, that was a lot of money, $300, $400 to go into the US to pick up your parts. But when you look at the cost of shipping, remember my box yesterday, $30 for that box. That's a lot different when you're talking about a quarter panel. This quarter panel, I just checked this morning before I went on this video. This quarter panel is $285 US plus tax. Shipping. So to get this quarter panel from the exact same place in the US to the exact place in Canada that box got delivered for $30, this panel is $300 US to get it delivered here. So you can imagine if you order a quarter panel, then you order another quarter panel, and you order your inner and outers. Now I checked the inner and outer wheelhouses because they're a smaller, easier box, less prone to damage. The inner and outer wheelhouses, if I buy a pair of them, and that would be $128 for the pair, is $50 shipping, right? So that would be $50 to get that inner and outer delivered to my house here. So the idea is it cost effective to go down for an inner and outer? No, it is not. Is it cost effective to go down and pick up 2 quarter panels, 4 pairs of inner and outers, and a bunch of frame parts and a couple of interior parts? And yeah, absolutely, drive to the US, pick up those parts. You are going to spend $200-300 in fuel. You are going to spend $200-300 in hotels, but you're going to save a lot of money. And on top of that, you are handling your quarter panels. You're the one putting them in the back of the truck and laying them down on a nice piece of foam, not a delivery truck just trying to get it here as fast as they can. So that's some of the costs I just wanted to talk about. Obviously, the problem is the borders are closed. I can't go into the US. It is January 2021. I don't think they're going to open the borders until the vaccines have really been started to be implemented across the populace. Probably June. I'm hoping earlier, but it'll probably be May, June before they open a border up. Now, there are parts I can't get. They can't ship hazardous material. There are some of my color codes I need. There are some of the sprays I want. I can't get those. So there are things in this car I can't do until I get those things. So basically, until the borders are open, I can't go into the US. I can't pick up some of the hazardous material I would like. And as far as getting them shipped, if you have to get it shipped, that's going to be what your cost is going to be. But I would suggest, like I said, looks like everybody's going to be on hold for a few months up here in Canada. So we might be a little late coming down into the US and showing you guys what we did. Anyways, everyone, just wanted to answer a few of the questions that I was asked. Thank you so much for watching, and like I said, I'm going to be working on my fender alignment, and that should be out in the next few days. I'll see you then.